Right. You're good to go. Okay.
Thank you, Miles. Good morning. My name is Garry Stevens, and I'm with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. I'm with the government, and I'm here to help. Right? Our mission statement with the NRCS nationwide is helping people help the land. And we do that through a local partnership in the counties that we're in. We're a nationwide agency. We're in almost every county in the nation, and we do that through the local soil and water conservation districts. The ones here in Webb County, Memo Benavides was supposed to be here this morning, and he's one of the local representatives. There's generally 5 people that sit on that board, and they help us direct our work with private landowners. We work with them to help them protect and improve their basic resources, soil, water, air, plants, and animals. All of our programs are voluntary, and they're offered without a fee. We provide technical assistance. You know, we can come out with you and work on your particular place one-on-one with you in a voluntary manner. Farmers, ranchers are generally our clientele, but we do have an ability to work with people on things as close as backyard conservation. We have a big emphasis on that in our agency. But it's to, bottom line is to improve the natural resources in Texas in this case. Like I said, it's a partnership with the landowners, the land managers, and the others who voluntarily work with us to develop pretty comprehensive conservation plans for their property through our technical assistance program. And that is the foundation program that we provide that assistance to landowners on, and we utilize certified conservationists to provide that planning and implementation assistance. And all of this and all of our work is dependent, number one, on the management goals and objectives of the landowner. That may be to produce cattle. That may be to produce crops. That may be to produce an area for wildlife. And that may be to produce an area to produce wildlife to take nature photography, ecotourism, and that sort of thing to the highest level. So it all depends on your objectives and your goals. Those conservation plans that we help you come up with conserve, manage, and care for your land, livestock, and wildlife by making, recommending, and making those improvements to your operating unit or your backyard. Those plans that we do with you on a voluntary basis are confidential. They're not contracts of any kind, and I know that contracts, we have some cost share programs, some funding that we're going to talk about. And how many of you here have ever heard of the NRCS? Quite a few of you. How many of you ever heard of EQIP? A few of you. That's one of them we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And generally, when you think of NRCS, you think about those cost share programs here lately, especially because we're like real flush with money. We got a rich uncle, so far. But those contracts, when we talk about those are a little different story. But our technical assistance that we provide to you on a voluntary, confidential basis are not contracts. They're voluntary through the soil and water conservation districts. The resources that we consider when we're working with you on your place are the basic resources: the soil, the water, air. If you're up around Lubbock, air quality becomes a problem. If you're around Houston, air quality becomes a problem. Plants and their state, and animals. So all of those things we're looking at, including the human dimension here. That human dimension, in this case, why we're here today, is ecotourism. It's more of a diversity, adding diversity to your operation. So that personal guide when you take your friends out on your place and see what you're doing to your land and how you're benefiting your land. As it's probably been stated here this morning, Texas is predominantly privately owned land. Those benefits of the conservation practices that we're planning with you extend beyond your land and on where these things are applied. So if you're on the upper Guadalupe River watershed and you're doing a conservation plan that considers the soil, water, air, plants, animals, and all of that, you're also benefiting all the way down to the bays and estuaries on the Gulf Coast, believe it or not, through increased water quality, increased water quantity maybe, and those sorts of things. You're having a direct impact on what you're doing on your place for a long ways down. So we're here today to talk about how you can enjoy the great outdoors. There's a lot more people that are turning to the great outdoors for personal relaxation and family fun. Texas is home to 2.5 million resident sportsmen and women, more than any other state. So from hunting to bird watching, and I'll have to tell you, I got into the field of wildlife management for the hunting. You know, that was the draw. That's what my impetus was. But you know, the longer I've been around, the more I see that sometimes it's just quiet enjoyment. I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't care if I shoot something when I go set the blind or not, as long as I can see some things. See a green jay land right outside the window, you know, or outside the blind. You know, it's more of a quiet enjoyment time for me these days as I've gotten a little older. So the conservation on these private lands makes the biggest contribution to the health and well-being of these resources. We work with landowners each year to help you reconstruct wetlands, build dams to create small private lakes and ponds, which serve as a platform for wildlife observation. We work with people on restoring native prairie habitats and planting trees in some cases here in Texas. And those are all crucial habitats for wildlife that you may be able to incorporate on your place and benefit that wildlife resource. So as I said, there's benefits for everyone, all the way from the top of the hills to the bays and estuaries in this case. NRCS works with private landowners to enhance habitats, to restore those native ecosystems. In this case, next to a subdivision there, to provide habitat along streams and rivers, around lakes and ponds. And so we do that by using some conservation practices, such as in order to create and maintain and improve fish and wildlife habitat, like prescribed burning in some instances to remove exotic invasive species like the cedar here. To manage brush, sometimes you have to get a little more radical with it, with a bulldozer here in this case, and completely try to restore that ecosystem. We have people that are engineers that can come in and work with us on staking those ponds, designing those ponds, helping with the planning and the implementation of structural practices that we become associated with. The conservation practices that we work with landowners on benefit at-risk species and threatened and endangered species, and there's a bunch of them in Texas, as you all know. Bobwhite quail are an at-risk species. Atwater's prairie chicken is an endangered species, probably on the brink of extinction. We do have programs, and I do work with landowners along the Gulf Coast, north of here, or well, east of here, that we're working on practices that benefit the potential for the Atwater's prairie chicken. Some of the practices include planting seeds to restore ecosystems, to planting trees, especially along some of these degraded wetlands that once were bottomland hardwood forests. We're coming in, we're actually trying to recreate that habitat type. We work with farmers on buffers along there, farmers and ranchers, but in this case it's a buffer right here along a drainage next to a cropland field. The benefits there are that the fertilizers and pesticides that are applied in this cropland field before they get here and run off down the creek, Little Creek, to the big creek, to the river, to the bays and estuaries, goes through a filter system of vegetation that helps to drop that stuff out. We have a big push this year on the enhancement and restoration of wetland ecosystems, and there's lots of interest in that in Texas. Some of the practices we're doing to manage invasive species like salt cedar here out in the western part of the state, or tallow trees, or mesquite, cedar, those sorts of things. So with that said, give you a little bit of information here on some of the results, I guess you could say, and we've invested more than $85 million through 5 different programs in Texas in our fiscal year 09. And ours is on a matching basis with the landowner, so there's more than $170 million worth of habitat restoration and conservation that's been applied to the ground. There's 5.2 million acres that were enhanced for wildlife and fisheries habitats. Individual conservation plans working with individual landowners were written on over 8 million acres in Texas last year. Landowners, you guys implemented conservation practices to improve soil quality and that sort of thing on 1 million acres, and across the state, and water quality on another 8 million acres. Wetlands were created and protected or restored on 7,200 acres. And then 8.6 million acres of grazing and forest land with conservation that was applied to protect and improve the resource base. Those were done through our Conservation Technical Assistance Program, as well as the cost share programs that I alluded to earlier, EQIP, Wildlife Habitat Incentives Program, Conservation Stewardship Programs, and so forth. And I'm going to go through each one of those just a little more detail. But with EQIP, we'll start with it, and farmers and ranchers can receive, once we've worked up a conservation plan with you through our technical assistance program, through the local soil and water conservation district, we can then come in and possibly fund some of those activities. And EQIP is one of the biggest programs that we have in the state. Rankings given to higher ranking is given to applications that address national, state, or local priorities. EQIP also has some sub-funds available that concern wildlife specifically. Several of those are the closest one, probably the bobwhite quail / Atwater's prairie chicken special emphasis area. There's some others, pronghorn antelope. This is a map that shows this area right in here, even down into Webb County, has a little bit of the bobwhite quail, the Atwater's prairie chicken over here in priority area. The pronghorn antelope, the lesser prairie chicken up there, the East Texas red cockaded woodpecker over in East Texas. Those all receive some additional specific funding to address the needs of those species' habitats. WHIP is a program that, EQIP is one that Congress says you have to be an eligible producer, you have to earn less than so much money over the last 3 years. They call it adjusted gross income. Congress set those numbers up, and what it does is it prevents big farmers, big ranchers from getting all the money. So there's some limits there. WHIP is a habitat restoration program that's not subject to the adjusted gross income. EQIP, you have to be an ag producer. You have to be producing livestock or crops or something like that. WHIP is a program where you don't necessarily have to be doing that. The emphasis there is to restore those native habitats like prairie savannas, those riparian zones, the thorn scrub down in South Texas, further south in here. And the emphasis is to restore those specific types of habitats. You can do that on land that doesn't necessarily meet the ag production potential. So if you have a place that you don't have cattle on, you still make and benefit from WHIP. The WRP program is one that the Wetland Reserve Program nationwide is a big program, because in order to set aside these lands, it costs a lot of money. Along the Gulf Coast there, from about Victoria to Houston, all along the coast, WRP is a retirement program for degraded wetlands that can be restored, and we pay about $1,800 an acre. So it takes a lot of, you look at the 7,200 acres last year, and you do some quick math, that's a lot of money. This year there's a big push to restore those wetlands. So far in my work area, which is South Texas, we have about 25,000 acres already kind of lined up to potentially enter into this program. Multiply that by 1,750, that's a lot of money. It can be done through perpetual easements. It can be done through 30-year easements or 10-year restoration projects. Farm and Ranch Lands Protection Program helps you keep your land in ag by providing matching funds to help purchase those developmental rights. I know that's a pretty popular program up around Austin. It's where we generally tend to see most of these type programs installed. Farm and ranch land must be part of a pending sale to a state or from a state, tribe, or local farmland protection program. It must contain productive soils or historic or archaeological sites, be privately owned, and have and be in threat of being developed and that sort of thing. It's a program that's designed to keep it out of urbanization. The Grassland Reserve Program is an easement type program that has 10, 15, 20 year or permanent perpetual type easements. In the area around Medina County, just kind of to the southwest of San Antonio, that's $1,800 an acre for a perpetual easement. In this one, basically, it's a grazing lands kind of a program. So we buy the developmental rights basically from you. The United States government buys your developmental rights. You keep the land, you still manage your land, you still run cattle, you still do whatever practices you were doing on it. As long as they're consistent with our practices, we're just paying for that easement right to keep it out of urbanization. The Conservation Stewardship Program is a different type of program in that it's a rewards program almost for you having done the right thing on your land. We can also add some additional activities and that sort of thing to improve those conservation practices and plans. It rewards stewardship activities, and it's available statewide on every acre of Texas. So if you've been doing a good job on your operating unit in terms of grazing management on top, in terms of crop production and that sort of thing, this is a rewards program that can benefit you, and also include some other practices that will help the land. We also work with several different partners. We'll talk about the local soil and water conservation district in a little more detail here in a minute. The state soil and water conservation board. One of them is the Fish and Wildlife Service. They have a program called the Partners Program, and a lot of times we can leverage our money, your money, and their money to get those practices installed on the ground. We all have a similar goal, and that's to protect the land and improve the land. Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board has a program that some of you may know about. It's the State Brush Control Program. In order to enhance water yield, water quantity downstream by taking off brush, like cedar trees out in West Texas, the salt cedar, that's a water robber, cedars, salt cedars, mesquite, and that sort of thing. They also have a 319 grant program that they can come out and work with you specifically on developing a conservation plan that's pretty consistent with our plans, and we work together directly with those folks to provide equipment, training, technical assistance, and that sort of thing. So here on the state brush control, out in the cedar country in the Edwards Plateau, you can see that we know what they're doing. They're coming in, they're reducing the canopy of brush, which leads to an increased water yield in the system. Texas Prairie Wetlands Project over along the coast, 91 Ducks Unlimited, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, and NRCS partnered up to create this. Texas Prairie Wetland projects provide financial assistance to you guys for levee construction and installation of water control structures, where waterfowl is an important aspect of your operation or your ecotourism base. In addition to financial assistance, that you're provided all the biological and the engineering work free of charge. It's a pretty good program. They do several of those projects a year in that area. Also, the Farm Service Agency, our sister agency in the counties just down the hall from us, have a couple of them. The CRP program. CRP nationwide was a big program, 40 million acres that were preserved or conserved under CRP. As we're going along now, that's dwindling. I think there's about 22 million in the nation now that's still in CRP. They also have a continuous program whereby they're adding some conservation to the ground through a buffer program, riparian forested buffers, and that sort of thing. And then also a SAFE program, where down in the lower part of the valley here, we're trying to work with them to restore about 5,000 acres of ocelot and jaguarundi habitat in those cropland areas. Lesser prairie chicken, we're reconnecting isolated populations by creating about 20,000 acres more of native grass prairies. Mottle duck and Atwater's prairie chicken in the coastal counties, about 11,000 acres has been allocated and approved for that area to benefit the mottle duck, basically. So, with that, if you need more information, Melissa Blair is here, our public affairs person, has a booth right outside here, has some information for you. You can go back home to your local county and contact your local office, or you can visit the website here, and it has pretty well everything that you're going to need in order to determine what our services could be for you. You can get off the website. With that, Miles, thank you.